Okay, so today we are going to read pages 43 to 49, and we're going to complete not the left slide, but the right side of slide 12. It's always good to preview the questions. So the first one says, on page 43, Carlson said, "Well, I can't stand him," meaning the dog. "He stinks." Candy replies, "I've had him ever since he was a pup. From this conversation, what can you infer?" Then the men in the bunkhouse suggest what, and after it is finished, what do they offer Candy? If you would like an exceeds question, a higher level thinking question, what might Candy and the fate of his dog foreshadow about the plot? All right, so we left off with Slim actually giving Lenny one of the pups, and he says, "He just like a little kid, ain't he?" "Sure, he's just like a kid. There ain't no more harm in him than a kid either, except he's so strong. I bet he won't come in here to sleep tonight. He'll sleep right alongside that box in the barn. Well, let him. He ain't gonna do no harm out there." It was almost dark now. Old Candy, the swamper, came in, and he went to his bunk. Behind him struggled his old dog. "Hello, Slim. Hello, George. Did either of you play horseshoes?" "I don't ever like to play at night," said Slim. Candy went on. "Either you guys got a slug of whiskey? I got a gut ache." "I ain't," said Slim. "I'd drink it myself if I had, and I ain't got a gut ache neither." "Got a bad gut ache," said Candy. "Them goddamn turnips give it to me. I know they was going to before I even eat 'em." The thick-bodied Carlson came out of the darkening yard. He walked to the other end of the bunkhouse, and he turned on the second shade light. "Darker than hell in here," he said. "Jesus, what a pinch shoes." "He's pretty good," said Slim. "Damn right he is. Didn't give nobody else a chance to win." He stopped and sniffed the air. Still sniffing, he looked down at the old dog. "Ugh, God almighty, that dog stinks. Get him out of here, Candy. I don't know nothing that stinks as bad as that old dog. You gotta get him out." Candy rolled to the edge of his bunk. He reached over and patted the ancient dog, and he apologized. "I've been around him so much I never notice how he stinks." "Well, I can't stand him in here," said Carlson. "That stink hangs around even after he's gone." He walked over with a heavy leg stride and looked down at the dog. "Got no teeth," he said, "and he's all stiff with rheumatism. He ain't no good to you, Candy. He ain't no good to himself. Why don't you shoot him, Candy?" The old man squirmed uncomfortably. "Well, hell, I had him so long. I had him since he was a pup. I herded sheep with him," he said proudly. "You wouldn't look at him now, but he was the best dumb sheepdog I've ever seen. I seen a guy in Weed, and he had an Airedale that could herd sheep. Learned it from other dogs." Carlson was not to be put off. So, okay, one of the things I want you to think about here, let's add like a little text box, is that when Carlson suggests shooting the dog, I can, like I would say something like, I can infer that Candy would have, oops, let's make sure we spell that right, a difficult time putting his dog down because they have been together since since his dog was a pup. I don't know if you've ever had a pet, but it's when you've been around them a long time, they become like family. Carlson was not to be put off. "Look, Candy, this of a dog just suffers itself half the time. You can't take him out and shoot him right in the back of the head." He leaned over and pointed. "Right there. He'll never even know what hit him." Candy looked about it unhappily. "No, No, I couldn't do that. I had him too long. "He don't have no fun," Carlson insisted, "and he stinks to beat hell. Tell you what, I'll shoot him for you. Then it won't be you that does it." Candy threw his legs out the bunk. He scratched the white stubble whiskers in his cheek nervously. "I'm so used to him," he said softly. I had him from a pup." "Well, you ain't been kinder to keep him alive," said Carlson. "Look, Slim's dog got a little right now. I bet Slim would give you one of them pups to raise up, wouldn't you, Slim?" The Skinner had been studying the old dog with his calm eyes. "Yeah," he said. "You could have a pup if you want to." He seemed to shake himself free for speech. "Carl's right, Candy. That dog ain't no good to himself. I wish somebody'd shoot me if I get old and cripple." Candy looked helplessly at him, for Slim's opinions were law. "Maybe it hurt him. I don't mind taking care of him," Carlson said. "The way I'd shoot him, he wouldn't feel a thing. I put the gun right here," and he pointed with his toe, "right at the back of the head. Wouldn't even quiver." Candy looked for help from face to face. It was quiet and dark outside by now. A young laboring man came in. His sloping shoulders were bent forward, and he walked heavy on his heels, as though he carried an invisible grain bag. He went to his bunk and put his hat on a shelf. He picked up a pulp magazine from the shelf and brought it to the light over the table. "Did I show you this, Slim?" "Show me what?" The young man turned the back of the magazine and put it on the table and pointed his finger. "Right here. Read it." Slim bent over it. "Go on. Read it out loud." "Dear Editor," Slim read slowly, "I've read your mag for 6 years, and I think it's the best on the market. I like the stories by Peter Rand, and I think he's a wingding. Just give us more like Dark Rider. I don't write many letters, just thought I'd tell you. I think your mag is the best dime worth I ever spent." Slim looked up questioningly. "What do you want me to read that for?" "Go on, read the name at the bottom." Slim read again. "For yours for success, William Tenner." He glanced up at Whit again. "What you want me to read that for?" Whit closed the magazine impressively. "Don't you remember Bill Turner? He worked here about 3 years ago." Slim thought. "Little guy? Drove the cultivator?" "That's him," Whit cried. "That's the guy." "You think he wrote this letter?" "I know it. Bill and me was here one day. Bill had one of them books that just come, and he was looking in it, and he says, 'I wrote a letter. Wonder if they'd put it in a book.' But I wasn't there. Bill says maybe they're saving it for later, and that's just why they done. There it is." "Guess you're right," said Slim. "Got it right in the book." George held out his hand for the magazine. "Let's look at it." Whit found the place again, but he did not surrender his hold on it. He pointed out the letter with his forefinger, and then he went to his box shelf and laid the magazine carefully in. "I wonder if Bill's seen it," he said. "Bill and me, we worked that patch of field of peas, run cultivators, both of us. Bill was a hell of a nice fella." During the conversation, Carlson had refused to be drawn in. He continued to look down at the old dog. Candy watched him uneasily. At last Carlson said, "If you want me to, I'll put the old devil out of his misery right now and get it over with. Ain't nothing left for him. Can't eat, can't see, can't even walk without hurtin'." Candy said hopefully, "You ain't got no gun." "The hell I ain't. Got a lugger. Won't hurt him none at all." Candy said, "Maybe tomorrow. Let's wait till tomorrow." "I don't see no reason for it," said Carlson. He went to his bunk and pulled out a bag, and underneath it he took out a lugger pistol. "Let's get it over with," he said. "Can't sleep with him stinking around here." He put his pistol in his hip pocket. Candy looked a long time at Slim to try to find some reversal, and Slim gave him none. At last Candy said softly and hopelessly, "All right, take him." He did not look down at the dog at all. He lay on his bunk, crossed his arms behind his head, and stared at the ceiling. From his pocket, Carlson took a little leather thong. He stooped over it and tied it around the old dog's neck. All the men, except for Candy, watched him. "Come on, boy. Come on, boy," he said gently. And he said apologetically to Candy, "He won't even feel it." Candy did not move nor answer him. He twitched the thong. "Come on, boy." The old dog slowly and stiffly got to his feet and followed the gently pulling leash. Slim said, "Carlson?" "Yeah." "You know what to do?" "What do you mean, Slim?" "Take the shovel," said Sim shortly. "Oh, sure, I get you." He led the dog out into the darkness. George followed to the door and shut the door, and set the latch gently in its place. Candy lay rigidly on his bed, staring at the ceiling. Slim said loudly, "One of my lead mules got a bad hoof. Gotta get some tar on it." His voice trailed off. It was silent outside. Carlson's footsteps died away. The silence came into the room, and the silence lasted. George chuckled. "I bet Lenny's right out there in the barn with his pup. He won't want to come in here no more now that he's got a pup." Lim said, "Candy, you can have one of them pups if you want." Candy didn't answer. The silence fell on the room again. It came out of the night and invaded the room. George said, "Anybody want to play a little etcher?" "I'll play a few with you," said Wit. They took places opposite of each other at the table under the light, but George did not shuffle the cards. He rippled the edge of the deck nervously, and the little snapping noise drew in the eyes of all the men in the room, so that he stopped doing it. The silence fell on the room again. A minute passed, and another minute. Candy lay still, staring at the ceiling. Slim gazed at him for a moment and then looked down at his hands. The subdued one hand with the other, and he held it down. There came a little gnawing sound from under the floor, and all the men looked down toward it gratefully. Only Candy continued to stare at the ceiling. "Sounds like a rat was under there," said George. "We ought to get a trap down there." Wit broke out, "What the hell's taking him so long? Lay out some cards, why don't you? We ain't gonna get no etcher played this way." George brought the cards together tightly and studied the backs of them. The silence was in the room again. A shot sounded in the distance. The men looked quickly at the old man, every head turned toward him. For a moment he continued to stare at the ceiling. Then he rolled slowly over, faced the wall, and lay silent. George shuffled the cards noisily and dealt them. Wit drew a scoring board to him and set the pegs to start. Wit said, "I guess you guys really come here to work." "How do you mean?" George asked. Wit laughed. "Y'all come on Friday. You got 2 days to work till Sunday." "I don't see how you figure," said George. Wit laughed again. "You do if you've been around these big ranches much. Guy that wants to look over a ranch comes in on Saturday afternoon. He gets Saturday tight supper and 3 meals on Sunday. Then he can quit Monday morning after breakfast without turning his hand. But you come to work on Friday noon. You got to put in a half a day no matter how you figure." George looked at him lovingly. "We're going to stick around a while," he said. "Me and Lenny, we're going to roll up a steak." The door opened quietly, and the stable buck put in his head. A lean head, lined with pain, the eyes patient. "Mr. Slim?" Slim took his eye from old Candy. "Huh? Oh, hello, Crooks. What's the matter?" "You told me to warm up the tar for that mule's foot. I got him warm." Oh, sure. Crooks, I'll come in and put it in. I can do it if you want to, Mr. Slim. No, I'll come do it myself. He stood up. Crooks said, Mr. Slim? Yeah? That big new guy's been messing around with your pups out in the barn. Well, he ain't doing no harm. I give him one of them pups. I just thought I'd tell you. He's taking 'em out and nest and handling 'em. That won't do them no good. He won't harm them, said Slim. I'll come along with you now. George looked up. If that crazy bastard's been fooling around too much, just kick him out, Slim. Slim followed the stable buck out of the room. George dealt with wit, picked up his cards, and examined them. Seen the new kid yet? He asked. So I'm going to pause here, and I want you to also take notice, even though it wasn't one of the questions, that Slim is going to go into the barn. Lenny's out in the barn with the pups, and also the stable buck. Keep that in mind for tomorrow. But today, Candy replies, I've had him since he was a pup. From this conversation, I can infer that. And what you're going to do is you're going to go back up. You're going to think about page 43. And then the men in the bunkhouse suggest what? Again, it should be something related to Candy, not Candy. Yeah, Candy and his dog. What are they suggesting about that? And then when it's finished, what do they offer Candy? And then there's an exceeds question. What might Candy and the fate of his dog foreshadow about the plot? So when you're thinking about his dog, and if you need a sentence starter, it might be something like, Candy and the fate of his dog are going to foreshadow that. Think about what character in this story might not be a lot of good to people around them. That's the hint that I'm going to give you. And we will talk tomorrow.